All right. Hey, welcome back to the Own the Outcome podcast with Tyler Deveraux. And today I'm here with none other than Ray Higdon, man. And Ray, I am pumped to chat with you. I hit you up on Instagram after, coming across some of your content. And man, I'm grateful to have you here. So any of y'all who, first off, who don't follow Ray or know who Ray is, put your seatbelt on. You're going to learn a lot. You'll go follow him. But Ray, thank you for being here, bro. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Our pleasure. So let's dive in. It's Own the Outcome podcast. So we'll certainly talk about challenges and struggles. I know you've had some of those and how you've owned the outcome regardless. But let's talk about your background. Tell me about where you grew up. What did life used to look like before, today?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Seymour, Indiana, which is southern Indiana. It's actually, if you've ever heard of John Cougar Mellencamp, it's where he's from. In his
Yes.
song, Small Town, I was born in a small town. That is Seymour, Indiana. So that's where I'm from.
Cool. Cool.
And I lived there until I was like 12 and then moved to Florida. And I currently live in Naples, Florida. Didn't have the ideal childhood, grew up in a very abusive home, which I'm now, after all these years and a lot of understanding, I'm actually very grateful for, because it allowed me to go into rooms that I otherwise couldn't go into. So I do, as often as I can, I speak to kids in foster care. I speak to, kids who've, been through trauma and things like that. And I can speak to them with authority because that was me. And so it's, being a part of child charities and things like that has always been important to me. And, you know, um, I've been a full-time entrepreneur now for 18 years, and very, very grateful for this path that, that I've been on.
Yeah, bro. I want to backtrack a little bit because you said, and you teased a little bit where, entrepreneur for 18 years, and I'm going to get into the amazing things that you've done because you've done amazing things. But I want to backtrack a little bit because you said that you grew up abused and now you're grateful for it. And in my opinion, that's the epitome of owning the outcome. But my question is, when did that happen? I'm sure that there was periods of resentment, periods of all those kind of things, all the feels I can imagine. But when did that switch happen for you where all that turned into gratitude?
Um, there's like, I wouldn't say that there was like from one feeling to another, just like one switch. There was a time where I really, really resented my stepmom and my dad, and I really held that against them. And and then it's been a different shades of forgiveness and understanding. And so I'll tell you, one of the breakthroughs that I had was and I think maybe the full healing, I don't know, but 2 years ago, I went and they were having this luncheon for these troubled teenagers. And, I wasn't the guest speaker. I wasn't anything. But I'm just like observing what they're doing. And so I asked the coordinator, I'm like, hey, I'm a speaker. I do motivational stuff and leadership and mindset. Can I talk to him? Like, do you mind? Like I just felt nudged and called to do that.
Love it.
And so the coordinator was like, well, if you're going to, don't talk to that table. And so, of course, that's the table I go to.
Yeah.
And so as I'm walking up, they're looking at me and they're like, who's this white boy? They're just kind of looking at me like, right. I know it. I know the look. And about two stories in, they're like, okay, okay.
Mm.
And, you know, I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I had, the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I've been working with my friend who's a psychologist for five counties in Florida for foster care system. And she works with thousands of kids in foster care. And she told me one day something so meaningful. She said, Ray, I've been working with kids in foster care for 20 years. And all I was doing was trying to make their life better. I really didn't have any hope for them because I figured they're kind of screwed because they all have really rough situations and they're just in rough shape. And she said, I never actually had any hope for them until I heard your story. And it just, like part of me was kind of sad, right? Because I wish I would have ran into her earlier and shared my story sooner. Um, but the other part of me was like, man, I got to keep telling the story, because they've done studies where and I think this was from Cialdini probably, but they've done studies where they go to a teacher and they say, hey, we did some tests, and these kids right here are gifted, and so just understand they're gifted. And all of a sudden, those kids who actually were never gifted all of a sudden start performing better because the teacher has hope for them. And so when we have hope for people, we actually help them produce more. So by me equipping her, who works with thousands of kids in foster care that I don't work with, all of those kids will actually perform better, will actually do better in society, because I went through a tough time. So I will go through that tough time every time if that is an asset to the benefit of thousands of other people. And that's what she helped me with. So I'm very grateful. Now, the full realization was just understanding that if you've been through tough times, that was God perfecting you. That was God preparing you and perfecting you, and putting you in a position of anointing and impact. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful that he cared so much for me, that he put me through some of these tough times so that I would be equipped to help others.
That's so good, bro. There's so much to unpack from what you just said, because it's how I view it too. I got to tell you, I believe it's one of my biggest strengths is how I view situations. Because when I come up against struggles, I'm going through one right now that's probably one of the biggest ones that I've went through. But I'll tell you that and I've went through some shit too. But as I've gone through this, it's like my narrative. I literally was just talking to my wife about it last night. The narrative in my mind is, because I was bullet pointing. I'm like, holy cow, like boom, 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 and bullet pointing things for her. But the narrative in my mind is like, man, once I get through this, who am I going to be able to help on the other side? Like, it's going to make me better in every aspect, because I'll be able to serve in a better aspect, because I'll be able to connect on a deeper level. And I think that's so powerful that was that unlock. And that was that unlock because you felt called to step up, and you stepped up and you shared your story. It's like, man, that's awesome, dude. That is awesome. So when you were going through, because for you, like we talked about the hope aspect, what was it that as you were going through your struggles when you were, their age, what was it? I'm sure it was a number of things, but what was it where it was like, man, I'm in charge here, and I'm going to live a better life than what people expect me to live? Was there anything that happened there that enhanced your belief there?
I don't know that I can claim early wisdom. I don't think I had early wisdom. I was rebellious. I was a mixture of trying to prove myself, but also hating myself. I remember as a teenager looking in the mirror, and I hated myself so much that I smashed the mirror. And, and there were multiple times I tried killing myself. I sat in a bathtub, I plugged a toaster in, I pushed the button down, I threw it in the bathtub. Now, I'm no engineer, right? But I thought that would work. So it wasn't really a cry for help. Like I thought that was it. And so I'd like to claim that I had wisdom early on, but I didn't, and I never had that dad that was proud of me. I never had that. I never felt good enough. I never felt worthy. I felt unimportant. I felt like I couldn't trust anybody, which I really couldn't. In the third grade, my teacher, I'm guessing, knew something was off, and she had me start meeting with the guidance counselor. And so I start meeting with the guidance counselor, and I start to trust her, right? And so I start telling her some of the stories. And one day I show up for our meeting, and she has my dad, my stepmom in there, and she tells them everything I ever told her, because to her they seemed too outrageous to be true. And she thought that I just needed more attention at home. And so that was a bad day. And that's the day I stopped trusting anybody. And so up from that day forward until the age of like 42, I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust my wife of 12 years. I didn't trust my best friend of 15 years. I didn't trust any business relationship, personal relationship. I didn't trust anybody, but I didn't know why until I did the internal searching and understanding. And honestly, that was even blocked from my memory. It was in hypnosis that I found that I located that memory. And so a lot of times you'll meet someone who is, maybe they're not very good at conversations or small talk or connecting, and standoffish, maybe aloof, or maybe you even think they're better than you. A lot of times it turns out that they were just so hurt as a kid that they created these force fields and safety mechanisms that prevented them from trusting people. And so they figure, if I trust somebody, I'm just going to get hurt. And we draw those conclusions as a kid. And so a lot of times we draw the wrong conclusions of others. We think that, oh, they think they're better than me or something because they never want to talk to me. And a lot of times it's just they were so hurt before that they're just operating off of safety mechanisms, not their own volition.
Yeah, survival mode. Like, it's a good reminder. It's just a good reminder. You never know what people are going through or what they've been through. It's like, I live out here in Maui, and our tagline is invest with aloha. And on my wall over here, it says live with aloha. And you'll hear me at the end of this podcast say, live always with aloha. And all that means, aloha means, alo means to see. And then ha is breath of life. So when I say aloha, I'm saying I see the God in you. And it's reciprocal though. I know by seeing the God in you, you see the God in me. And then when I see you not living up to the God that I see in you, I'm going to breathe life into you. So that's what aloha means, like the deeper meaning, right? It's seeing people for just the God that they are and making sure that they, you're breathing life into them at all fronts, no matter what. Even if they come up, people will tell me all the time, how do you, living in Maui, like, do people treat you differently because, you're a white guy out there? And I was like, no, I haven't experienced that. And I haven't experienced that because I literally believe that my wife and I, we lead with aloha. We live with, we love people. So even if I meet somebody that's, not kind, well, I'm still going to be kind. And it's hard to be a dick to somebody that's smiling at you and being nice to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. I love that, bro. Thank you for sharing that. Man, I'm so glad that none of those attempts worked, to take your life, because you have a lot to share and so much value to provide. And I know you've seen that in your life as you continue to scale and grow your business and grow yourself. And I asked you when we started this, I said, man, is there anything that, you would like to talk about? Anything that, is important to you? And what did you say? Yeah, that happened, you said a year ago, like a year and a month ago, right?
Yeah. So 2019, I had accomplished a lot of the things that I'd set. 2013 was my first $1 million year, 2014 first $1 million month, 2015 first $1 million day. And between then had, $3 million days, right? And had generated over $30 million online. And spoken on Grant Cardone's stage, Russell Brunson's stage, shared the stage with Pitbull, Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, you name them. And all of those things I thought would make me feel different about myself, and none of them did, right? All the money, the achievement, the everything, all of them were good, right? Don't get me wrong, right? I appreciated them and I was grateful for them, but it was like I was still searching for something, and I didn't know what that was. It was like that YouTube song. I was still hadn't found what I was searching for, right? And so 2019, I just realized that I got all these trust issues. I have social anxiety. I mean, before I went and spoke on Russell Brunson's funnel hacking live stage, 5,000 people in Nashville, I literally hyperventilated in like the lounge area. I had to go back to my room and I called my coach. I'm like, you got to help me, man. I'm like dying. And I didn't know what was going on. And so I started a very different search, from 2013 all the way up to that time. I invested over $100,000 a year, every year, into my education, into strategy, tactic, funnels, closing, all that stuff that we invest money in.
Mm-hmm.
And I started a very different search. I started internal. Like, why do I react this way? Why do I not want to hang out with people? Why do I not want to go to social mixers and things like that? And so I tried a lot of different things. I tried a lot of different therapy. I tried hypnosis. 2 years, I did 1 to 3 hours a day of meditation. So I went from not being able to sit still for 5 minutes to 4 hour pineal gland meditations, right?
Incredible.
And it was, I mean, the last probably year, I would get up between 3 to 4 a.m., do a 90-minute meditation every single day, and tame the body, tame the mind. And all of that stuff was good. I'm not saying it wasn't.
Mm.
There's still something missing. So in November of 2022, my wife, she's a luxury real estate agent here in Naples, Florida, and she went and spoke in Nashville. And she comes back and she goes, "Hey, there's this guy you should talk to." I'm like, "Okay." And so I get on a Zoom with him, and he lives in Miami. And first words out of his mouth is, "I see a big vision for you and God." And I'm like,
Mm.
Hmm. Okay. I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't know one verse. I'd seen Tim Tebow with John 3:16, but I didn't know what that meant. And I even looked it up and I didn't know I'm like, what does that mean? Like I don't know anything. And so we talked for like an hour and it makes no sense at all, but it feels true. And that's kind of hard to describe. The
Mm.
next night, and I don't know what to do with it. So I'm just like, I'm gonna have to think about this. And so the next night I go to this networking function here in Naples, Florida. And I walk up the stairs. There's hundreds of people there. I probably know 100 people there. And I run into this guy who I've met before, but I didn't remember his name, didn't know what he did. And as soon as he saw me, as soon as we locked eyes, he goes, "I see a big vision for you and God." I'm like, "Whoa, that's weird, man." Like they don't know
Yeah.
each other. These are two different dudes. They
Oh,
literally said
two, really?
verbatim. They both said the same thing 2 different nights. They don't know each other. They're different coasts. And I'm like, "Well, that's weird." And he starts praying over me. He's a pastor. And so he puts his arms on me and he's like 6'4". He's a former corrections officer. And he starts praying for me. And I don't know why, but I start crying. I'm just like crying in the middle of this networking function. I mean, there's people walking this way, this way, this way, this way, people all around us, people I know. And so after like being caught up in the moment, I'm crying. I don't know why. And then I start thinking, this is kind of embarrassing, you know? And so we kind of come out of it and I look around. No one saw anything. Now that doesn't make any sense because we were in the middle of the function, people all around that I know, that he knows. No one saw anything. It's like God put a force field over us. And so I mean, he says a lot of powerful stuff in his prayers, really mind blowing. And I still don't know what to do. And so I kind of kicked it around, wasn't sure what to do. And then a few weeks later, I had the original guy. He brought a guy from church, and they came, to my house, and both my wife and I we gave our life to Christ. Nothing magical happens that day, but when I wake up, things are different. Like I wake up, I swing my feet over the bed, and my feet hit the floor, and I'm like, that's weird. I felt different, and so I'm looking at my hands. They're not my hands. These are not the hands I had the day before. I'm looking at the sunrise. I'm looking at the plants outside. I like have different visions. Like I'm something's wild, and so I just have this overwhelming feeling to pray, but I don't know how to pray. I don't know what to do. And so I just get on my hands and knees and I'm just like, "Hey, God, I don't know what to do here, but I'll be obedient. Tell me what to do. Guide me, direct me. If you want me to shut my business down, tell me. If you want me on the road with a robe, I'll do it." And I get go live. I'm like, "Ooh, I don't want to do that, man." I've been speaking on stages at that point for 20 years, roughly,
Yeah.
and I had never said the word God. Like I just didn't
Mm.
grow up that way. I just don't. And so I mean, I asked for it, so okay. So I go live, and it's an emotional, blubbering mess. I mean, I'm just seeing all the different identity crisis I had been through the last few years, and how I was trying to find my significance and status and safety, security, and all this stuff, and money and achievement and all this other stuff. And and I do it. It gets over 50,000 views the very first day, maybe like 24 hours, 50,000 views. I get over 1,000 messages, more messages than anything I've ever done. And like 200 messages were verbatim. "I've been woken up in the middle of the night to pray for you." but none of them had ever told me. And it's like just so wild. And like looking back, I just see how hard, God was working on me. And so since then, I've just changed my life. Like we've ran an annual event for 10 years. This year, we changed the name of it to Faith Over Fear, and talked very boldly about faith. Had John Maxwell as the keynote speaker. Had several different pastors speak on wealth and faith and finances, God and money, and that kind of stuff. And now I just, when you find, if you're a teacher that cares and you find something that actually gives you fulfillment and purpose, then you can't hide it. The
Mm.
Bible says the city on the hill can't be hidden, and you can't hide it. Like if you found that thing you were looking for your whole life, but you just didn't know what it was, you can't just shove it in the corner or put it away for Sunday morning. Like you have to bring it out. And so I
Mm.
am still called to be in the marketplace, and I teach faith-based mindset and leadership principles. So I still teach the marketplace. I still coach people, still mentor, still do all that stuff. But I bring faith into it because there's just such a big divide between this is the way of the world, this is God's intention. And so it's just such a different fulfilling purpose. And I find that we're at a time in this world where things are so topsy-turvy and so weird and so dark and so strange that people are looking and they're not finding it where they used to, or where they thought they might. And even Tony Robbins, he says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And a lot of people, I mean, I meet with people every week that are worth 30, 100 million, or even more. And the majority of them, they're not fulfilled, right? They may have all
Mhm.
the toys, they may have all the bling, they may have all the whatever, um, but they're not fulfilled. They're still looking.
Yeah.
And I really think that there's one actual answer to that. And I'm here to proclaim that answer.
I love it, bro. Thank you for sharing that, man. And thank you for making sure that that's a focus. You don't know this. And there's no way that you probably would know this. And I didn't realize that you had just, converted so recently. Um, but I have a couple companies. I have an investment company, and then I have an education company where we coach and mentor people on how to buy apartment buildings. And one of the major reasons, because I used to speak and teach for one of my mentors, and one of the major reasons that I decided to create my own is because by speaking and teaching, I was limited with what I could say. And one of the things that I could not say, well, I couldn't talk about my religion. I couldn't talk about my faith. And I didn't like that because I believe that, well, I know, man, that my success is because of my faith. I know that. Like, and I love that your event is called Faith Over Fear, because I believe that that's what most people do. What most people do is, if you think about fear, fear is projecting worst case scenario into the future. And faith is the opposite of that. Faith is projecting the best case scenario. But I believe that it's the key to my success, because I have this unrealistic optimism, because I believe that God's with me always. I believe that God literally wants me to have everything. I don't have to earn that. And when I go through struggles, it's like, okay, this isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's like just that switch though, but that's a faith. It's just faith. It's literally my faith that helps me have a perspective that is serving in the moment. And I'm grateful for that, bro. It makes me sad for people who don't have that. I don't know how they get through things. You know what I mean? So I love that you came to that realization.
And that's 100% biblical. Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful, but produces in you peace and righteousness for those who've been trained by it. And so, like, we're
Mm.
taught, James 1:2, count it all joy, my brethren, when you face trials of different sorts, because those produce in you a perseverance. And so, like, God loves you so much that he doesn't want you to remain the same. And for you to change, you're going to have to grow. And for you to grow, you're going to have to go through different trials. And that's just the way
Mm-hmm.
that it is. And if you can, look at it as he's the giver of all good and perfect gifts. Well, perfect gifts are things that you need. And,
Mm-hmm.
like I needed, for example, years ago, I went through foreclosure. I lost it all in the real estate market crash. I was $1 million in debt, divorced, depressed, in foreclosure. but I needed that. I needed to be humbled. I was arrogant. I was a jerk. I mean, if you couldn't do something for me, then I didn't want to have anything to do with you. And so like I needed that chastisement. I needed that humbling. And it also led me to a very different path, that I love. And, I do real estate at a little bit different, way than I did back then, but it led me to really focus on teaching, which is really what I'm called for.
Yeah, I can tell, bro. I can tell you're called for. I can tell by looking at your social media content, your little clips of speeches you give. Like, there's no question you're called, like literally called, to do it, and that's a powerful thing, man. And you've put yourself in a position to overcome lots of challenges, to be able to call from those challenges, to help. And bro, that's the whole reason I wanted to start the podcast, because so many people just talk about the good stuff and everything's so shiny and bright and beautiful, and like it's like, listen. There is that on the other side. There is that on the other side. But you get to the other side and you have that, not just success, but actual fulfillment by when you're going through it, like when you're going through the challenges, recognizing and understanding that you can still find joy in the challenges. And then on the other side of that is, I mean, it's just beautiful too, but really I find more joy on the pursuit of something than I do on the attainment of that something.
Amen.
Right? Yeah. So some of the topics that you speak about getting or how to get unstuck, and then how to remove excuses. I want to tie some of that in, because you've mentioned briefly some of these moments where you've been stuck. Certainly, how does removing excuses help you get unstuck, or what's your process for getting unstuck? Maybe I'll just ask that.
I mean, now it's interesting because now everything's just so different, like, in the past I would, lean on mentors, and I still have mentors. I don't want to pretend that I don't, but, I would lean on mentors. I would lean on my own understanding. And now I just turn to prayer, man. I turn to prayer. That's like my number one is I pray for wisdom. I pray for understanding. I pray for clarity, guidance, and direction. And and a lot of times just, something magical will happen. And so I think, like we're told, the Apostle Paul says to take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. And so what I think, like the number one thing I believe we are to own is our awareness, being aware, right? And we're told to tame the body, make it our slave, take captive our thoughts and make them obedient. And so, like, being aware, right? Am I aware when I am thinking negative? Am I aware when I'm, not trusting? Am I aware when I'm walking by my sight versus faith? And there's so many, great examples of this. One of my favorites, and there's so many from this one individual, but Abraham and his nephew Lot had become so prosperous that they couldn't occupy the same space anymore. And so Abraham goes to Lot and he says, "Hey, you pick, right? You can pick, left, right. You pick. I'll pick the other." And so Lot, looks over at the lush area of Canaan and he's like, "Oh, pretty nice over there," right? And so he goes in the lush area, probably deer prancing around, maybe waterfalls and whatever else. Abraham didn't care where he went because he walked by faith. He knew that God would go with him wherever he went, even in the desert. And so it's like living by faith, not sight. Living by faith. There's been so many times. I'll give you a more personal example. In 2019, up to that point, we had our biggest event ever. So we sold 2,200 tickets. People came from all over the world. It was great, right? It was a good event. And so we're like, all right, baby, we're going to go big now. So we put together a contract for 2020, 5,000 people, Orlando, Florida, going to rock and roll. And of course, what could go wrong? Well, then this thing came along. Some of you may have heard of it, called COVID. And, that obviously didn't happen. So we moved it to 2021 because no flu is going to last a year, right? Well, it was still going on in 2021. And they locked us in. They said, "Okay, that's fine. You can either get out of the contract for $700,000, just pay us cash, or we'll move it to 2023. I'm like, "Okay, well, not going to pay you 700 grand." So we moved it to 2023. This is $1 million contract. Okay. And, 5,000 people. we had only done one event since COVID, days were over or whatever. And so, we're staring down the barrel of this $1 million expense event. We'd only sold at the time like 600 tickets, right? And so there, I mean, it's just this is a big stretch. And so in prayer, I'm like, all right, God, tell me what should I be doing here, man? What do you want? And I just started asking different questions. I'm like, is there a speaker I'm supposed to get? John Maxwell.
Mm,
Ooh, that's a good idea. Like I hadn't thought about that, right? Like John Maxwell, like leadership, number one leadership expert in the world,
mm-hmm.
55 years training, 25 years was a pastor. Like that makes sense. So I reach out to him out to their camp and, like how much is it? You know what I mean? And they said, well, if you want to hire him to speak, it's 95,000 bucks for 2 hours. But you know what? We've looked at your organization. He would actually be willing to do a mentorship program with you and kind of partner up with you, and that'd be $250,000. And I'm at both prices. I'm like, eek. I'm like, because I'm already looking at $1 million, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so, I don't even think I prayed on it, but I just got nudged. God was just like, go all in. And I'm like, oh, seriously? Like I don't want to do this, man. Like I'm already $1 million. So I go all in. It didn't make any sense at all. And so I go all in, have John there. And what was interesting is during the event, someone came up to me and said, hey, do you know that there's a lot of people in this room? So this year, just a couple months ago, we had about 1,200 people in the room. So we didn't hit the 5,000. We didn't hit the room block, missed it by 200 grand. But someone came up to me at the event and said, hey, do you know there's a lot of people in here that don't even know you? I'm like, really? Like it's my event, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
I asked the question. I'm like, hey, how many in here don't really know my story? And about 40% of the audience raised their hand. They came
Mm,
because I got John. And
mm,
we sold a bunch of mentorship programs, a bunch of mentorship packages with John. And so we ended up doing okay, right? We ended up covering the
yeah.
cost. We ended up doing all that. But you know what? Counter to my own logic, had I not invested with John, I would have lost my butt. It would have been
Mm,
horrendous. And so it's when you walk by faith, not by sight, it's you're not looking at you don't know what's on the other side of obedience. And I've had that experience many, many times. One very recent time was we were on a Holy Land tour in Israel. And on October 7th, war broke out. It was the middle of our
mm,
tour. Okay. So we were 5 days in. It went from, yay, this is Nazareth and Capernaum and Galilee, and this is awesome, right? To, oh my God, they just killed all those people
yeah.
at the concert, right? And so the
Jeez.
middle of our tour, war broke out. And so we had to go in the bomb shelter 3 times. My wife was in fight or flight for 4 days straight. It was intense. But I prayed on it. I knew we'd be okay. So I walked by faith. And that's the difference is when you make God your source, when you lean more on him than your own understanding, your own wisdom, your own way of thinking, then you're covered, you're okay. And it's just been a
Mm.
wild ride.
Bro, and that clarity and that peace of mind, it resonates with me so much because that's what we're all searching for. Because we don't know, like when I talk about owning the outcome, you can't own the outcome. Like you don't control the outcome. You can control what you do right now. And I believe if we focus on what we do right now and we do our best right now and we know that we're living in line with God, then any outcome will be the necessary outcome, whatever it is. And that terrifies people. It terrifies me all the time. Well, you too. I can tell from even just the story. It's like, are you sure? Really? It's like, but when you are aligned, dude, it gives you tons of confidence. And, really confident faith means with confidence. That's what faith means, is with confidence. And you have that by having a greater source that you can pull from. And in the moment, it sounds crazy. It might sound crazy. It might be fearful. But once again, if you feel the fear, that doesn't come from God. That comes from somewhere else, right? So it gives you clarity and peace of mind. Like, okay, that's it. That's it. And love, right? That love, that aloha, love, power, sound mind. And I believe that love is the starting point of it. because you got to love yourself first, and you've done that. That's one of the biggest ways that you got unstuck. I mean, I'm just hearing your story, and it's like you found a way to love yourself, and by loving yourself, man, you found a way to show love to so many other people. And that's why you're so passionate about service. You know, you talk about service being the best, leadership tactic and all, business tactic. And it is. Yeah, and you learn that from, the greatest leader. That's Jesus Christ, man. It's all service. That's what he did. So I love it, bro. I love it. So right now you've listed off a bunch of things. What are you most proud of from what you've done? Business-wise, remove all the other stuff. Most proud of business-wise from what you've done. Yeah, let's do that.
I think, this was quite a while ago, but the one that comes up is is pushing myself to get over the fear of speaking. And, the first time I had to speak in front of a group, it wasn't a crowd, but a group, I was a project manager for local county government here. And my boss said, "Hey, on Wednesday," this was like a Monday morning, "Hey, on Wednesday, why don't you give a project update to the department?" And that was like 6 people. And I'm like, what do you mean?" She goes, "Oh, put something together and just, present in front of them." And I'm like, oh my God, like that sounded horrible. And so I didn't sleep, Monday night, Tuesday night. I went to the library. I got like Speaking for Dummies or whatever, Idiot's Guide to Speaking or something. And I reading these books and I'm just like so nervous. And I remember that morning, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to call in sick. And so, and it's like, like we're a small department. So she would just make me do it whenever I come in. So like that would be pointless. And so I go in there and I give my project, I give my update. I somehow develop a stutter. I spill water on my shirt. Like it's a train wreck, but I got through it. So I'm feeling relieved, like, whew, I got through it. And this boss, her name was Maggie, who I really respected. Like she gave me a chance. She was probably my first mentor, honestly. Because my dad was never a mentor to me, and I really didn't have an authority mentor ever. And so she pulls me into her office afterward, has me close the door, and she goes, "Ray, are you on drugs?" I'm like, "Oh man." And I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
"No, I was just nervous." And so I remember sitting in the parking lot and I got my green Hyundai Sonata and I'm just thinking, all right, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to quit. This will be a 6-year hole in my resume. I'll go figure something out. I'm just going to quit. And just something nudged me inside. You got to get over this. And so instead, this doesn't make any sense looking back, but instead, I drove to the local college. I said, "Put me in every speaking class you have." And the registrar even said, they're like, "Well, that's usually the last class people take, but okay." I enrolled in Toastmasters. And this also doesn't make any sense, but as about 2 years later, I was speaking on the Vegas Strip at Planet Hollywood. I had left that job. I had joined a real estate, like traveling speaking gig, and and life was very different. And there were, I went from like in that job, I think I was making $38,000 a year. Okay. There were 90-minute slots where I made 30,000 just 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember there
Crazy.
was a Estero, Florida. I had a 90-minute slot. I made 30 grand speaking, all selling, not a fee or anything
Yep.
like that. And it's just so crazy. So what's beyond your fear is something you don't know, and you don't know how big that is. And so that thing that you're afraid of, man, if you tackle that, if you just go after it, you don't know what's behind it. Like I could have cowered. I could have quit that job and I wouldn't be on this podcast. That's for sure. What
Yeah.
else wouldn't I have
Yeah.
been? I wouldn't have been on any stage. Right. I would have never experienced all the different things that I've done. I'd still be working somewhere and, hard worker, but afraid, small, wimpy. And so like, that thing that you're afraid of, maybe it's a tough conversation, or maybe it's sharing your story and being vulnerable. I don't know what it is, but that if I really look back, that moment right there defined all of these years, really. Because if I don't do
Mm,
that, none of this other stuff happens.
yeah. Bro, I love that I love that. And I think it's a framework for success and fulfillment, which is whatever it is that you're fearful of, that's where you need to place your energy. It makes me want to I promise you after this, I'm not joking you, I will list out like what am I procrastinating? What am I holding off out of fear?
Here,
Because
here's
then
a
this,
gr- here's a great question for you.
yeah.
What can I do today that would make me proud of myself?
Mm. Do you know what's so funny?
Dangerous
I
question.
but do you know what's so funny? I literally just recorded. I'm not shitting you. Right before we jumped on, I recorded a video about something very similar because I went to my little boy's school yesterday during the middle of the day. Went and helped with gingerbread houses and hot chocolate and stuff. And as I was there, Paxton had pulled up my YouTube channel and was showing my YouTube channel to all of his buddies in the classroom.
Nice.
And well, in the moment, it was like I didn't even know how to take it. But in bed that night, I was like, man, my little dude is proud of who his dad is. And like, that's the best thing in the world. And so I recorded a video. I'm not joking. Right before we jumped on, that was like, I told that story, and I was like, "What are you doing today that's gonna make your kids proud of you tomorrow? You know, or to help you become the person that your kids need you to be tomorrow?" And I love that question because I know. This is what I love about doing these podcasts is because I ask these questions, and the whole time that I'm asking these questions, in my mind, it's like, oh man, the listeners are gonna love this. This is gonna be so powerful for them. 99% of the time, it's for me. But the questions I ask is for the audience, but the response I get is like, oh, that was for me. I needed that. Because
Awesome.
that helps you unlock a new level. No, I appreciate you. So that's why I'm grateful for individuals like yourself who are selfless enough to come on and answer those questions and share those stories and be that source of inspiration. You're a beast, man. You're a beast. Yeah, I love it. So it's interesting because speaking is such a great way to share a story. It's such a great skill set to be able to have. But I want to the framework that you laid out, and this is where I was kind of maybe we wrap this up because the framework is how you've owned the outcome, which is when the fear was present. It's not that you just kept running into the fear aimlessly. You went, you got educated. Like
Yeah.
you got educated. That education, all education does is put you in a position to become more comfortable to take the action. That's it. And then you learn and you learn and you learn and you excel. That's a recipe for success in anything you do is that get educated, take action, get educated, take action, take more action, learn, fail, grow, succeed, you know?
Amen.
Oh,
Amen.
owning the outcome. Dude, thank you so much, man, for taking the time. I want to ask and end with one more question, which is just what's next? Like, what is the next outcome that you're pursuing? Because you've done so much, man. You've done so much. What is the next outcome that you're pursuing and that you're trying to own right now?
Yeah. It's I mean, just today I decided, or actually technically it kind of started yesterday, but um I decided that I need to be discipling more people, not just in business, but also in faith. And so, today I put together a text group, and it's three other leaders in my industry. They've all made, tens of millions, maybe one of them's hit 100 million. And they'd all expressed to me that they would like to um, get more biblically sound, and like they'd like to learn the Bible more. And I know, hey, I've only been at it a year, but the way God wired me is I'm absolutely relentless. I mean, I'm absolutely ruthless when I'm like a dog with a bone. And so like I'm every day I'm in the word. I have a Hebrew Aramaic trainer. I have multiple pastors that I've learned from. I'm in a sermon group. And I've actually delivered sermons. I've done altar calls and all kinds of. I mean, it's just crazy how I'm wired. And so I've really gotten into understanding the Bible. And there's a lot of leaders out there that they thought success and achievement would do it for them, and they're finding, there's something missing, and so I am gonna be discipling more people and helping them understand and kind of navigate the lessons of the Bible. For example, one that I think of all the time, and I believe it's 1 Samuel 12:1. It says, at the time of the year when kings went out to battle, David stayed home. Okay. The next verse is Bathsheba, where King David is distracted and kind of goes down a bad path. So the lesson there is we have to walk in our anointing. And as soon as we stop walking in what we're anointed to be and do and our identity, we're going to have spiritual warfare. We're going to get distracted. We're going to fall off. We're going to get wayward. We're going to have bad things happen, man. So you have someone that walks so well with the Lord, and then at the time of the year when kings went out to battle, he stayed home. He wasn't supposed to stay home. Stay in your anointing. He was a king. He was a warring king. And so what, us determining, I know that I have to stay in teacher. I have to stay as someone who disciples others. I have to stay speaking in front of crowds, impacting people. As soon as I back away from that and I want to just retire or something like that, which I've never had that desire, then I'm out of my anointing. Bad things are going to happen. I'm going to get distracted. I'm going to have lust. I'm going to have greed. I'm going to have something else happen. And so helping navigate the different lessons of the Bible so that you can live that powerful life and live to the potential that God really has for you.
That part. What a great way to wrap this episode up. Like that part right there. What are you anointed to do? Stay in that, grow in that. Man, power. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Yeah, you definitely need to share messages from, and break down meanings. I've never pulled that meaning from that story. What a great meaning, bro.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Listen, everybody, I'll put all your social links and everything in there. I'll put links to your books because, bro, you've written how many books now?
I think we've written like 4. I mean, our latest was Time, Money, Freedom. It's put out by Hay House Publishing. My wife and I
look it up on Amazon.
Together.
I'll put it up there. It's all your books are like 5 stars. I was baffled when I looked up your. They are like there might be one that's like 4 3/4. Whoever that asshole is that left the bad review, it's bullshit.
Yeah, but dude, it's amazing, man. So I'll put all those links and everything in the description. But Ray, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for owning your outcome so you can help us own ours, man. We appreciate you.
Thank
you.
And
everybody else out there.
Hey, you're so welcome, man. Everybody else out there, man, go follow Ray, go read his books, go digest his content, and then live always with aloha. Peace.